Hello, my name is Paul Festa. I'm the creator, along with the people you'll hear from in the following pages, of the movie Apparition of the Eternal Church. The movie captures a confrontation between 31 mostly non-religious artists and the music of Olivier Messiaen, the great French Catholic composer who was born a century ago this year and died in 1992. Originally, the point of the movie was to see how people would respond to Messiaen's 1932 organ work, Apparition of the Eternal Church. But over time, the mission clarified into a question very close to the second part of this book's title. The book's title is, "Oh my God, Messiaen in the Ear of the Unbeliever." The question is, what does this passionately Christian music sound like to those of us who are not Christian? The director's commentary in this book tells you who these listeners are and how they wound up wearing headphones in front of a camera, information the movie deliberately withholds. With a handful of exceptions, these 31 listeners don't have any special expertise in Messiaen. I felt that introducing them by artistic accomplishment or professional affiliation would extend a false promise of their authority while demolishing the intimate atmosphere that made this movie so much fun to shoot and edit. Besides, though I only realized this later, what qualified them to be in the film wasn't that they were successful artists, it was that they didn't believe in Jesus. I studied chamber music with Albert Fuller at Juilliard in the early 90s and fell immediately, deeply, and irrevocably under his spell. In the thick of Juilliard's competitiveness and impersonality, Albert was far more than a teacher. He was a friend, shrink, fellow traveler, high priest, drinking buddy, and through the concert series his Helicon Foundation put on in his West Side duplex and in New York's best chamber music halls, he was a nurturer of careers. You can also see Albert's apartment on another DVD since Columbia rented it from him to film All That Jazz. The experience of leaving Juilliard and walking into Albert's studio was like emerging from a Kansas concussion into Technicolor or escaping Privet Drive through platform 9 3/4. Juilliard was a good school, but its spectacularly depressing physical plant, the exterior top-heavy as a migraine, the practice rooms tattered, smoke and food-stained, airless, low-ceilinged, and windowless, bore a more than coincidental resemblance to the student body's mental health. Albert's studio, with its 22-foot ceilings, 20-panel map of 18th century Paris, artificial palms, elegant harpsichords, and 19th century Steinway Model C, carried an equally powerful resonance of Albert's imagination. Albert's charisma drew in unequal parts from his musical accomplishment, his position as impresario, his personal charm, graciousness, and erudition, the lavishness bestowed upon him by admiring patrons of that apartment, and the lawless edge that adhered to his pot habit and dirty old man as Mae West persona. My piano trio of 3 vigorous young men Albert dubbed the testosterone trio, or the testostertones, came and played for an hour, and then Albert, observing that it was almost 6 o'clock, invited us to his bar for a glass of champagne. So the testosterone trio would fold up scores and follow Albert from the great main room of the studio, the Rendezvous Lounge, and sit at the white, brightly lit bar, the positive bar, where negative attitudes were not served, that separated Albert's kitchen and rarely used dining room, the Tonga room, which is named for the Hurricane bar a block away at the Fairmont Hotel. Let's see. There at the positive bar, Albert would pour drinks, and later he would roll a long, thin joint, and when everyone's consciousness was sufficiently permeable, he would put on a recording of music that had caught his interest that week. We'd listen and absorb, and like Quakers in their circle, we would speak, if moved to do so, to describe our experience of listening. At Juilliard, I studied with Juilliard String Quartet founding first violinist Robert Mann, who taught me important things about music making, how to shape a phrase, convey nuance, and other elements of musical sophistication. But Albert taught an even more powerful lesson at the positive bar when he put a CD on and described what was unfolding in his imagination, in what he called the theater of his imagination. He had such a theatrical understanding of music. Every work of Schubert or Beethoven was opera in his ear. Albert taught us how to listen in 3 dimensions. with sets and dialogue and abandoned heroines ruthless with desperation. If a boundary separated music and drama, Albert didn't honor it, and like a wizard or a magician, he sat across the bar from us and made it disappear in a puff of smoke. Albert's reference to his childhood threw me. I knew that he played organ in his youth, but to learn that Albert Fuller, whose name over the previous 50 years had become synonymous with the music of Bach, Rameau, and Scarlatti, had been playing hot-off-the-press Messiaen in his salad days, was like the Pope telling you he danced a mean hora at his own bar mitzvah. Many years later, Albert met Messiaen at a midnight dinner party at Alice Tully's apartment on the 27th floor of the Hampshire House on Central Park South, following the 1974 premiere performance in Tully Hall of From the Canyons to the Stars, 85 minutes of atonal bird music that Albert detested. Miss Tully seated them together because Albert was fluent in French, and Messiaen, despite being the globe-trotting son of a Shakespeare translator, barely spoke a word of English. They did not hit it off. Despite being an adventurous gourmand, Albert couldn't tolerate even the smell of caviar. For Messiaen, it was ambrosia, and Alice had provided him a silver tureen full of beluga and a little matching silver shovel. Throughout the meal, Messiaen literally shoveled the black fishes into his mouth, and every time he turned to speak to Albert, clouds of fragrant marine fertility wafted his way.